The deafening crack of a gunshot shatters the air. A loyal service dog collapses in. Slow motion as a blind 7-year-old girl screams in the middle of a busy crosswalk. Chaos erupts. People are shouting. Phones are recording. Sirens are wailing. And then, a stranger steps forward from the crowd, pointing at the wounded. Dog and saying words that silence everyone. I know this dog. What happened next shocked the entire city, and it's all caught on camera. This is the true story of a blind girl, her hero K9, and the day they rewrote the meaning of justice forever. Before we start, I want to know you. Tell me in the comments, which country are you watching from? And when you hear this story, I want you to share exactly how it made you feel. Did it warm your heart? Did it make you cry? Or did it leave you speechless? And hey, if you love powerful, emotional stories like this, then hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss one. I promise today's story will stay with you long after it ends. Now, let's begin. The late afternoon sun spilled soft gold across the quiet suburban street. As Ella Moore felt the gentle pull on the harness in her left hand, the leather was worn smooth under her fingers, and the steady guiding pressure came from Hero, her loyal service dog, a German shepherd with warm amber eyes and a patient, unshakable presence. To most people passing by, Hero looked like any well-trained dog, but to Ella, he was much more than that. He was her sight in a world she could no longer see, her quiet protector, her constant companion through the shadowed landscape her life had become. Ella had lost her vision at 11 years old. A rare degenerative condition had taken it piece by piece, first dulling the edges, then dimming the colors, and finally leaving her in darkness. At first, she'd been terrified to move through her own house, every step a potential stumble. But when she was 15, Hero had come into her life. She still remembered the first day she met him. It had been at the training center, the smell of freshly cut grass and disinfectant. In the air, the sound of panting dogs and cheerful trainers' voices. Her hands had been trembling, and not from fear exactly, but from hope that she didn't dare say out loud. And then, a warm, wet nose had touched her palm. A soft weight leaned into her legs. Her fingers had sunk into thick fur, and she'd felt a steady heartbeat under her touch. That was Hero. He hadn't barked or bounded like some of the others. He just stayed there, quietly waiting, as if he already understood that she needed calm, not chaos. That very moment, Ella had whispered, "Hi, I'm Ella," and Hero had tilted his head, as though memorizing the sound of her voice. Now, years later, their bond was something unshakable. They moved like two parts of the same being, his paws hitting the sidewalk in rhythm with her steps, his body subtly shifting to warn her of a curb, a crack, or an obstacle ahead. That afternoon, Ella was heading home from the little bakery 2 blocks away. She liked the bakery not just for the cinnamon rolls, but for Mrs. Klein, the owner, a woman in her 60s who always made sure to set aside a warm pastry for her and sneak Hero a piece of ham. "Here you go, sweet girl," Mrs. Klein had said earlier, pressing the warm paper bag into Ella's hands. "And this, for my favorite customer," she'd added, slipping Hero his treat, while he sat perfectly still, tail thumping softly against the floor. It was in moments like these that Ella felt almost normal, like her life wasn't defined by what she couldn't see, but by what she could feel. The warmth of fresh bread, the soft thud of Hero's tail, the kindness in someone's voice. As they walked, Ella's free hand brushed against the tops of hedges along the sidewalk. Hero's harness shifted gently left, guiding her around a trash bin she would have otherwise walked straight into. "Good boy," she murmured. Hero's ears flicked back at her voice, but he didn't break stride. At home, Ella's world was carefully mapped in her mind. Every piece of furniture, every step, every door. Hero followed her in, waiting patiently as she put the bakery bag on the counter, then nudging her leg with his nose until she crouched to scratch behind his ears. "You always know when I'm smiling, don't you?" she said softly. His tail swept across the kitchen floor like a broom. That evening unfolded in their usual rhythm, Ella moving carefully around the kitchen while Hero stayed close enough to guide, but far enough not to trip her. She boiled pasta, humming to herself, while Hero lay at her feet. When she bent to drain the pot, His body shifted to block the cabinet corner so she wouldn't bump her hip. They ate together, her at the table, Hiro at his mat with his own bowl. She talked to him like she always did, telling him about the feel of the sun that afternoon. The smell of cinnamon rolls, the sound of the mail truck stopping outside. Some people found it strange, the way she spoke to her dog as though he were human. But Hiro responded in ways that words didn't need. A quiet sigh when she was sad, a nudge of his nose when she was worried, a warm head resting on her lap when silence stretched too long. After dinner, Ella moved to the couch, curling up with a blanket while Hiro hopped up beside her. She let her hands rest in his fur, tracing the familiar map of his shoulders, his strong neck, the smooth curve of his back. "Remember last winter?" she murmured. "When I tripped over that ice patch?" Hiro gave a soft chuff, as though he did remember. And she laughed. "You dragged me right back up like you thought I was going to slide all the way to the next county." She thought about the years they'd had together, the first time she dared to cross a busy street without holding someone else's arm, the first bus ride where she didn't feel like the world was spinning around her. Hiro had been there for all of it, each step building her courage. But life wasn't always so peaceful. Sometimes on their walks she'd feel Hiro stop suddenly, his body tense, his head turning toward something she couldn't hear. Sometimes, in the stillness of night, Hiro would rise from his bed and stand, near the door, ears pricked, as though listening to something far away. She always told herself it was nothing, maybe just a raccoon in the alley or a neighbor coming home late. But part of her wondered what Hiro saw in the darkness that she couldn't. The next morning started like any other. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen as Ella fed Hiro. She measured the kibble by touch, poured it into his bowl, and laughed when he sat waiting for her permission. "Okay, go on," she said, and he began eating, his tail wagging lazily. They had plans to walk to the park, her favorite spot in the city. It was a place where she could sit on the bench under the old oak tree, feel the wind through its leaves, and hear the distant sound of children playing. Hiro loved the park too, not for the playground or the pond, but for the open space where he could stretch his legs during off-duty moments. They took the same route they always did, 3 blocks down, left at the corner where the florist's shop always smelled like roses, then past the cafe with the clinking cups and laughter spilling out onto the sidewalk. Ella didn't notice anything unusual, but Hiro did. As they neared the park, his pace slowed, his ears tilted forward, his body shifted slightly closer to her leg. "You okay, boy?" she asked. His tail swished once, but the tension in his shoulders didn't fade. At the park, Ella found her bench by counting steps from the path's edge. She sat down, Hiro lying at her feet with his head up, scanning the world she couldn't see. For a while, everything felt right. The breeze brushing her cheek, the sound of laughter, the faint creak of swings. She reached down to ruffle Hiro's ears, feeling his steady breath. But then, the swings went silent, the laughter faded, and Hiro's body went rigid. His head turned sharply toward the far end of the park, ears locked forward, chest rising and falling in slow, controlled breaths. Ella tilted her head, listening, but all she could hear was the rustle of leaves. "Hiro?" she whispered. He didn't move, didn't look at her. Only a low, almost inaudible rumble came from his chest. She tried to tell herself it was nothing, maybe another dog, maybe a jogger. But then Hiro rose to his feet in one fluid motion, placing himself between her and whatever he was staring at. "Okay, you're freaking me out," she murmured, her heart rate ticking up. Still, Hiro didn't relax. Ella couldn't see it, but somewhere beyond the trees someone was watching them, and they weren't moving away. Ella froze. The angry bark of Hiro reverberated through her chest like a warning siren. The sound was deeper, sharper, different from his normal alert bark. This was raw, protective. Her fingers tightened instinctively around the leather harness. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Hiro shifted his weight, planting himself between Ella and the source of the noise. She felt the sudden, rigid tension in his body through the harness strap, like a drawn bowstring. Then came the voice, harsh, clipped. "Ma'am, step away from the dog, now." The tone sliced through the air, commanding and cold. Ella's heart lurched. This was no casual passerby. He's my service dog," she began, trying to steady her voice. but the sound of boots crunching against the pavement was already moving closer. Hero growled low, a deep rumble that vibrated through her palm. "You match the description," the voice barked again. "Step away from the animal." "Description?" Ella's mind spun. Her breathing quickened. Somewhere to her right, a car door slammed. The noise ricocheted around her skull. But what the crowd watching didn't know, the narrator in this story would say, was that this wasn't the first time this officer had drawn a weapon over a dog. The man was Officer Grant Reeve, a name that in some parts of the city was spoken in a mix of fear and bitterness. To Ella, he was just a faceless authority figure in the dark, but Hero's every instinct screamed danger. "Sit down!" Reeve's voice cracked like a whip. Hero didn't sit. Instead, he inched forward, shielding Ella. His nostrils flared, he caught the metallic tang of gun oil. Ella's hand clutched Hero's fur, confusion building into dread. "You've got the wrong person," she said more firmly now. "I'm not. Hands where I can see 'em." The words hit her like a physical blow. Hero's muscles bunched, his breathing quickened, short and sharp. Somewhere across the street, a bystander muttered, "Why is he going after a blind girl?" Someone else whispered, "Don't get involved." But here's what nobody in that street knew, the narrator would say. This exact corner had been the scene of a K-9 theft just 3 weeks earlier, and the officer had been humiliated in that case. The standoff stretched, seconds that felt like an eternity. Ella's ears filled with Hero's heartbeat and her own. She tried to take a small step back, but Hero stayed rooted, blocking her path. "What's going on?" Her voice cracked now, panic fraying the edges. Reeve's tone sharpened. "That dog. I've seen him before. Military K-9, stolen from active duty. Stand aside." Ella's breath caught. "Stolen?" She wanted to laugh, to cry, to scream. "He's mine. I've had him since—" "Lies," Reeve snapped, his boots scraping closer. Hero barked again, short and explosive. Ella stumbled back a step. The street suddenly felt smaller, the night colder. But the officer didn't know, the narrator's voice would cut in, that the man who had trained Hero to serve once wore the same uniform he did. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, a man with a weathered face and a limp in his left leg. His jacket collar was turned up against the cold, but his eyes, pale blue, sharp, locked onto Hero like he was seeing a ghost. "Hero?" the man said softly, almost too soft for anyone but the dog to hear. Hero's ears twitched. His head turned slightly toward the voice, then back toward Reeve. Ella's fingers gripped the harness. "Who's there?" she called, her tone somewhere between pleading and defensive. The man didn't answer her right away. His gaze stayed on Hero. Memories flickered in his mind. A sun-bleached training yard, the crack of commands, the shared silence of dangerous nights overseas. Reeve's hand moved. The motion was small, but Hero caught it. The shift of a shoulder, the faint click of a holster snap. Instinct screamed. Ella felt Hero surge forward. She barely had time to gasp before a deafening crack split the air. The shot wasn't meant for her, but the sound ripped through her world like an explosion. She staggered back, her cane clattering to the ground. The crowd gasped. Someone shouted, "He shot the dog!" Hero's bark cut off into a yelp. Ella dropped to her knees, hands searching frantically. "Hero! Hero!" But what the officer didn't see, the narrator's voice would say, was that the bullet hadn't hit where he thought. Hero was still on his feet, barely. The shot had grazed his shoulder, tearing fur and skin. But his stance stayed firm between Ella and Reeve. Blood dripped onto the pavement, but his eyes stayed locked on the threat. The veteran, still standing at the edge of the crowd, took a step forward now. "Reeve, stand down," he barked, his voice suddenly hard, authoritative. Reeve froze, recognition flickering across his features. "You?" The veteran's jaw tightened. "You've made a mistake." But mistakes were already turning into something far worse. The night fractured into chaos. Bystanders pulled out phones, recording. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Ella's trembling hands found Hero's fur, wet and sticky. She choked back a sob. "You're okay, boy, you're okay." Reeve's radio crackled, but he didn't reach for it. His eyes darted between Ella, Hero, and the veteran. "This dog is military property," he said, louder now, as if justifying himself to the crowd. "He's mine," Ella shot back, the tremor in her voice replaced by steel. He's saved my life more times than I can count, and I won't let you take him." But what she didn't know, the narrator would add, was that Hero's military record carried a classified mission, and one man in that crowd was here to keep it buried. And that's when the second twist hit. From behind the veteran, another man emerged, cleaner cut, suit under a dark coat, eyes hidden behind mirrored glasses even in the streetlight. He didn't look at Ella, didn't look at Reeve. His gaze was locked solely on Hero. Hero's ears flattened. A growl bubbled low in his throat, a sound Ella had only heard twice before. The man spoke just one word, Alpha. The name sliced through the night. Hero stiffened. Ella's breath caught. She didn't know what it meant, but Hero's reaction told her enough. This was a piece of his past she'd never been told. The veteran's face drained of color. "You have no right," the suited man cut him off. "We need to talk, now, before more people get hurt." The scene became a pressure cooker, Reeve gripping his weapon, the veteran stepping closer, Ella clutching Hero, and this new man radiating something far colder than law enforcement procedure. The crowd didn't know who to believe, and Ella, she was starting to realize she might not know her own dog's full story at all. But if she thought this was the worst the night could bring, the narrator's voice would warn she was wrong. Because danger wasn't done yet, it was only shifting, and its next target was closer than she thought. The officer's hand was still on his holster, but now the street had fallen into a strange, breathless stillness. The shouting crowd seemed to shrink back, leaving Ella and Hero in an exposed circle of sunlight. Hero's chest rose and fell fast, his eyes locked on the officer's every twitch. Ella's voice trembled. "Please, he's not dangerous." But the officer didn't relax. His jaw was tight, eyes narrowed. Dogs like that don't just wander into markets. That's military training right there. Whose is he? From somewhere behind the crowd, a man's voice cut in, calm but low, like someone walking carefully across ice. "I know whose dog he is." Heads turned. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped forward, wearing a worn army jacket. His hair was streaked with gray, his eyes sharp with a soldier's alertness. He stopped a few paces from Hero, and the dog's ears twitched at the sound of his voice. The veteran's name was Caleb Turner, and the way Hero's gaze fixed on him sent an electric jolt through the air. The officer frowned. "You know this animal?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He knelt down slowly, his hand hovering just above the ground. "Hero," he murmured, not calling, not commanding, but remembering. Hero's tail flicked just once. His weight shifted forward. Ella's eyes darted between them. "Wait, you know him?" Caleb nodded faintly. "Not by this name. Not when I last saw him." The officer's suspicion deepened. "Explain." Caleb looked up, and there was a shadow in his gaze now. "That's Alpha 7. We served together overseas. Search and rescue missions, bomb detection. He saved lives." The crowd murmured, but Caleb wasn't looking at them. His eyes were locked on Hero, as if seeing a ghost he'd thought was gone forever. But what the crowd didn't know was, Hero's disappearance years ago wasn't an accident, and the man who had ordered him gone was closer than anyone realized. Before Caleb could say more, the officer stepped forward, tension snapping like a tripwire. "That's classified history. This dog belongs to the government. Hand him over." Ella's voice cracked. "No, he's mine now." The officer moved fast, reaching for Hero's collar. Hero darted sideways, putting himself between Ella and the man. A low growl rumbled from his chest. "Call him off," the officer barked. "No." Ella's fists were clenched white. "You don't get to take him. You don't know what he's been through. I know exactly what he's been through," the officer snapped, "and that's why he's dangerous." The standoff cracked open in a burst of motion. A boy in the crowd stumbled forward, dropping a paper bag. The sudden movement made the officer flinch, his hand tightening on his weapon. Hero lunged, not at the officer, but toward the boy, knocking him out of the gun's path as the officer's finger twitched. A deafening bang tore through the square. People screamed. The boy scrambled to his mother. Hero staggered, not from a bullet, but from the sheer shock of the gunshot at such close range. Ella dropped to her knees beside him. "You're okay, you're okay." Caleb's face was stone. He stepped between them and the officer. "Put that gun down, now." The officer's lip curled. "Step aside, Turner. You don't outrank me anymore." Caleb's voice turned cold. "No, but I still have the records. I know exactly what you did to Alpha 7's unit before the last mission." The officer's face tightened, just for a heartbeat, but it was enough to confirm Caleb's words carried truth like a blade. Someone shouted from the far end of the street, "He's getting away!" And Ella looked up just in time to see two uniformed men pushing through the crowd toward her. They weren't here to protect her. Caleb's voice snapped sharp. "Run." Ella didn't hesitate. She bolted down the narrow side street, Hero keeping pace at her hip, the sound of boots pounding behind them. Caleb held the officer back with a shove, but the moment Ella disappeared from sight, the chase was on. The alleys twisted like a maze, every turn echoing with shouts and the scrape of shoes on pavement. Hero's ears flicked constantly, guiding Ella away from the loudest threats. At one corner, he stopped dead, forcing her to halt. Ahead, two more officers blocking the path. Her chest burned, heart hammering. What now? Hero moved before she could think, leaping toward a stack of crates, scrambling up and looking back at her. "You want me to climb?" she whispered. Shouts grew louder behind them. Okay. She scrambled up after him, hands scraping wood, until they dropped onto the next street over. They kept moving, breathless, until they burst into a deserted courtyard. Stillness, only the sound of her heartbeat in her ears and Hero's steady breathing. She crouched beside him. "You okay?" Hero pressed his head against her shoulder, not just reassurance, but urgency. His eyes scanned every shadow, and that's when Caleb stepped out from the far side. "You didn't think I'd let you run alone, did you?" She nearly collapsed in relief. "You found us." "Not just me," Caleb said, and from behind him, another figure emerged, an older woman with a limp, wearing a faded medic's patch on her jacket. "This is Dr. Mara," Caleb said. "She treated Alpha 7 after missions. She knows what really happened to his unit." Mara knelt, extending a hand toward Hero. He sniffed it, then pressed his nose into her palm, a gesture of recognition. But Mara's next words would change everything Ella thought she knew about Hero's past, and why the officer wanted him back. The hospital corridors were a blur of white light and rushing footsteps. Sirens had barely faded before emergency staff swarmed the gurney where Hero lay, his fur still matted with blood, his shallow breaths rasping against the oxygen mask. Officer James followed alongside, refusing to let go of the stretcher rail, his jaw set like stone but his eyes glistening with fear. "Sir, you can't go in." A nurse tried to stop him at the swinging ER doors. "I'm not leaving him," James said, voice low and shaking. "Not after what he's done." Inside, the medical team worked with urgent precision. They shaved patches of Hero's fur, revealing an ugly gunshot wound that had torn through muscle. Blood loss was the biggest danger now. James stood in the corner, hands clenched, feeling useless. Every beep of the monitor was a spike of hope or terror. In the waiting area, a small crowd gathered, witnesses from the square who had seen the shooting. They were still rattled, still angry. The tension was electric. And yet, in a quiet corner, the old veteran, the one who had called Hero Shadow, sat with his cap in his hands, rocking slightly, lost in thought. James approached him. "You know him, don't you?" The veteran nodded slowly, knew him before he was Hero. "Back then he was Shadow, my partner overseas." His voice trembled. "We cleared villages together. He saved my life when an IED went off. But when I came home, I couldn't take care of him. They reassigned him." James felt a strange heaviness in his chest. "You never knew what happened to him after that?" The veteran shook his head, eyes watery. "I thought he'd be put down after the injury. I never imagined I'd see him again, saving someone else." Before James could respond, a doctor appeared, peeling off gloves. The whole room seemed to stop breathing. "He's critical," the doctor said, "but he's a fighter. We're prepping him for surgery now. If he makes it through the next 2 hours." He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The polished oak benches were packed. Journalists, townsfolk, even students from the local college filled the room. At the defense table sat Officer Dalton, the man who had fired the shot. He looked smaller now, hunched, avoiding eye contact. The prosecution played slow-motion footage from the square, captured by a bystander's phone. Hero charging, not at the crowd, but at the real threat, a man slipping through with a concealed weapon. Dalton's shot had been reckless, preventable. James was called to the stand. He spoke plainly, but every word carried weight. That dog did what every officer swears to do: protect the innocent, even at the cost of his own life. Dalton didn't see it, didn't want to see it, and Hero paid the price. Gasps filled the courtroom when the veteran was called next. He took his time walking to the witness stand, leaning heavily on his cane. He told the jury about Shadow, the missions, the saves, the bond, and then, his voice breaking, he wasn't just a dog, he was a soldier, and Dalton shot him like he was nothing. By the time the verdict came, guilty on all counts, the air in the room felt lighter, freer. Spring sunlight spilled over green grass. Hero lay on a soft blanket, a long scar down his side, but his tail thumped steadily when James crouched beside him. The veteran stood nearby, smiling through tears. "You're a stubborn old thing," James murmured, scratching behind Hero's ear. "Guess I'll have to keep you around." Hero leaned his head against James's knee, eyes closing with quiet contentment. The crowd from the square had started something, a petition, a movement, a rallying cry. They called it the Hero Code, pushing for better training, more accountability, and proper retirement for service dogs. James didn't just sign it, he became its loudest voice. The veteran joined too, finding a new purpose. "Guess we're both getting a second chance," he told James one afternoon, as Hero chased butterflies in the grass. The closing shot was simple but powerful. Hero, healed and strong again, wearing a new tag on his collar. It didn't read Shadow or K9 unit. It read, "Hero, guardian of two worlds. He saved us more than once. Now it's our turn to protect him. And everyone like him." Fade out. If Hero and Ella's journey touched your heart today, don't just keep it to yourself. Share this story so more people can believe in the power of love, loyalty, and second chances. And now I want to hear from you. Which moment in the story moved you the most? Tell me down in the comments. I read every single one. Also, let me know which country you're watching from. I love seeing our community come together from all over the world. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you never miss our next heartfelt story. Together, we can keep telling stories that bring hope to millions.